Okay, this is political and economic change in Iran, Objective 3 about the modern revolutionary period of Iran, which picks up off of Objective 2 with the white revolution of the Shah. Now, if you remember in Objective 2, the Shah is really the last, the Pahlavi dynasty is really the last of the great monarchies or Shahs in Iranian history. And the Shah now, by the white revolution, is being seen as not such a great guy. At this point, and this is important to remember, take a look at A1 on the outline here. Previous Pahlavi Shahs had been considered authoritarian, as many leaders in history have been, but that's not always a bad thing. They generally treat their people, I shouldn't say generally, but a lot of them treat their people well while still being authoritarian rulers. But when you're mistreating your people, authoritarianism takes a total shift into totalitarianism, and the Shah is being perceived as totalitarian at this time. He actually had a private police force that would spy on people who were speaking out against them and bring them in. It sounds very Adolf Hitlerish, which makes you wonder why we supported him from the United States perspective. But, you know, if Hitler had oil, I shudder to think what we would have done. Anyway, the Shah had oil, so we supported him and kept him in charge, which is one more reason that the Iranians didn't necessarily like him. Or us. Now the Shah creates a patronage system that had very little true corporatism in it. They felt he had moved away from religion too much, too fast, and was becoming way too westernized. And probably the most damaging thing to the Shah was that he was being seen as a puppet of the, according to the Iranians, the great Satan. Which was the United States. They felt like the U.S. had ruined their country through their influence on the Shah, Western influences, oil-based interests, things like that. Basically, Iran was split into two distinct parts. Those who wanted to modernize and be a little more westernized, and those who wanted to be very fundamentally traditional. And the Shah represented those who wanted to modernize. That didn't, again, look real good because other things that came with that westernization were the private police force, the patronage system, and totalitarian methods that were Western in their nature to a degree. If you think about that and put all that together, the public opinion of him was not very good, and a revolution is likely going to happen. That revolution, if you take a look at letter B, takes place in 1979. The Islamic Revolution, it's completely religious, led by Shiite Muslims, and it started by basically fundamental Islamic clerics led by this guy, the Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, the things that Khomeini stood for were orthodox, fundamental Islam, not left to interpretation by anyone, but very literal views of the Quran. He also supported political traditionalism. He was very conservative. He held a major resentment toward the Shah in the United States. And he also promoted the idea of the Velayat-a-Faqih. I'm not entirely sure I said that right, but it sounded pretty good, which was an old Shia tradition called the jurist's guardianship. And it said that senior clergy have authority over the unfortunate people in society. Khomeini meant that this meant he had authority over all Shias. Now, what doesn't help things also is that oil prices decreased by 10% while consumer prices are going up. So in terms of the Shah westernizing the country, it doesn't look very good. Now again, the Shah is under somewhat of an influence of another U.S. president, Jimmy Carter, who was a big believer in human rights. You can see Carter over here on the left side. Now, Carter believed in freedom of speech and said the Shah, just go ahead and give your people freedom of speech. Well, that kind of bit the Shah because as soon as he did, major protests and revolutions started to erupt because there was really no need to stop them anymore. Khomeini gets exiled to Paris, but while he's in Paris, his speeches are played over public speakers in Iran, and everyone begins to support the rebellion. Mass large protests. Take a look at the numbers on B3C there. Now the Shah flees the country in 1979 to get asylum or protection from the United States, and as you can imagine, that's going to create a lot of tension. Basically, the Shah and Jimmy Carter become mortal enemies. The bottom line here is that the Iranians wanted the Shah to come back to Iran to stand trial for all the things he had done. When the United States refused that and said, we're going to protect the Shah and not send him back there, the Iranians had an answer for that too. What they did is attack the U.S. Embassy in the capital city of Tehran and took employees of the embassy hostage. This became known in America as the Iran hostage crisis. And they basically said, we're going to keep the hostages until the Shah comes back to stand trial. Well, eventually the Shah dies of natural causes in the United States, and in 1981 the hostages are freed, but they'd been in captivity for almost 2 years at that point. As a matter of fact, as a side note here, the Shah was so upset with Jimmy Carter that he waited until the day that Ronald Reagan was sworn into office before he sent the planes out to free the hostages. The bottom line was that even though Carter did all the legwork to get them freed, the Shah didn't want the Shah didn't want the hostages to be freed on Jimmy Carter's watch. He wanted it to be something that the new president was given credit for. It was a total slap in the face to Jimmy Carter. But during that time, before the Shah had passed away, the Iranians had already made efforts to change things. If you take a look at letter C here about the Iranian Republic, this is founded in April 1979, again while the Shah is in asylum in the United States. Basically, they hold a national referendum election, and driven by the people to do this, and the Shah is officially voted out of office at that time. As a result, they formed the new Islamic Republic of Iran, and they have a constitution drawn up by the body known as the Assembly of Religious Experts, 73 clerics who are directly elected by the people. Now, you can have mixed views on how this looks if you're an Iranian person, because this constitution does give authority, broad authority, to Khomeini and the clergy, and the prime minister didn't like it. He wanted a republic with a president. He just felt like it was kind of switching authoritarian leaders. The problem is that it was presented to the people during the hostage crisis when hatred for America was way up, hatred for the Shah was way up, and so it got a 99% approval rate. The other problem with this is that immediately afterward they launch a cultural revolution to purify Iran from the Shah and from the Shah's ideas of secularism, which is separation of church and state, and Western ideas. This included clearing universities of all liberal professors or anybody that would promote new thinking or democracy in any way. It also suppressed opposition in civil society and referred to it as revolutionary justice. Now, as you can see here, revolutionary ideas or protesting is still a part of Iran today. So the Cultural Revolution of Iran didn't get rid of that totally. But one big remnant, as you can see here, is the idea that they don't like the United States. Given the reinstatement of the Shah in 1952, ideas of the Great Satan, ideas that he was a puppet of the United States, and all the bad things that he did to the people that they associated with the United States because the U.S. did support him, it still has led to these feelings that have carried on since the days of the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Okay, hope that helps. If you have any questions, please make sure you ask them when I see you in class.